All right. Well, it's 2 o'clock on the dot. So I want to welcome everybody to the Mylio Photos coffee break. Glad you're able to join us today. Today's topic is comparing local versus cloud storage services and how those both can help and improve your workflow with Mylio Photos. So to explain some of these pros and cons, I asked my friend and colleague JC to come in and join us today. And he's going to share some of those things that you want to consider when you're setting up Mylio Photos, making sure everything is secure and backed up, and where things should go. So welcome, JC.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm supposed to talk now. Okay.
Yeah. Ideally, yes. I mean, I can ramble on for a while longer, but
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that's great about Mylio, and one of the ways in which I use Mylio myself for my own photos and my own personal library, is to keep my photos protected. And what I like is that I don't have to think about it. I take a photo with my phone, and I know that as soon as I open the Mylio app on my phone, that photo is going to be saved in multiple locations in its original form. And all the editing that I do in Mylio, whether I'm correcting metadata or I'm doing image editing, that's all non-destructive. And even if I take that photo outside to another application and then I bring back a version of that photo that has edits in it, that's also being saved by Mylio everywhere. So I can always find the photo that I want. And I know that the likelihood of me ever losing a photo again is very, very low. But it's very, very low because of the way in which I have set up my own Mylio library. And I'm going to share my screen here and show you how my system is set up. This is my calendar view. Let me move some windows around here. Keep the chat open so I can see what people are saying. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the dashboard and click on devices. And here's a list of all of my devices. And I happen to have a lot of devices in my account, both because I'm a geek and I have a lot of devices, but also because I keep some devices mostly for demo purposes, right? I show Mylio to a lot of people. So I do have a device that's running on every operating system. Oh, I'm turning the Surface tablet on. You can't quite see me. Biometrics. All right, there we go. So I do keep Mylio running on all 4 operating systems: Mac, Windows, iOS, and Android. And that's what you're seeing here on the top portion of the screen. You're seeing that the device that I'm in is a Mac Studio. Then I have an iMac, I have a Mac laptop, I have a Surface tablet, I have another laptop that's running Windows, and then I have 3 mobile devices, 2 of them running iOS, 1 running Android. But most important is my cloud and drive storage here at the bottom. And that is where my original files, the full-size, full-resolution, pristine copy of my photos is being saved. And you'll see that there's 3 of these devices that are being have been designated as vaults. Then I have a cloud storage, in this case Backblaze, that is also saving a version of my photos. And that's why I know that every photo I take with my phone, every photo I take with my camera is being saved not only in an optimized version to all of my devices, but also in its full original version to 3 different devices. And that gives me a lot of security. And it doesn't matter if I take the photo with my phone or take photos with some of my cameras and import those photos in one device, regardless of where the photo gets imported, they always end up on all 4 of these devices. And I don't have to think about it. It just happened. Mylio, the application just needs to be running and it finds those devices and it saves everything. Let's first talk about the local devices. I have 3 local devices. I have main media is small, well, relatively small, it's about 8 terabytes array, is all SSD drives, is connected via USB-C to my Mac Studio. And that's a very fast drive, but it's also redundant within itself. If any one of those drives were to die, I wouldn't lose the data because there's a RAID redundancy built in. You don't have to worry about that. That's just something that I've done for extra protection. You can do it as well. It's just showing you that it's not just a single hard drive that you can plug into Mylio and use. You can use something like a RAID array and other devices. So that's my main device. It's always connected to this computer right here, the JC Mac Studio. My other two devices are, one is a small SSD drive. It's only 2 terabytes. My library happens to be less than 2 terabytes, so all the photos do fit into that drive. And the third one is an 8 terabyte single drive Seagate hub. That drive is actually connected to my iMac over here. So it's in a different room in the house, connected to a different computer. Both my wife and I use that computer for different things. It's kind of like the family computer, but I have a copy of my photos going to that computer. The travel vault, because it's a small drive, when it's synchronized, and right now it's not synchronized, notice there's about 5,000 photos that need to be saved to it, and Mylio is working on that right now. Once that drive is synchronized, I'm going to physically put that device in a fireproof safe that I keep in my basement. So that's pretty good protection right there. However, if all of those copies are local, they're here available to me. What are the advantages of a local copy of your originals? Well, in the case of main media, which is the drive connected to my computer, I'm always going to have immediate access to every version of every photo in Mylio. I can go to the calendar here. I can go to any photo. Let's find that photo of the, here's a photo of somebody that I took surfing. I can ask Mylio for that original. I'm sorry. I can ask Mylio to show me that externally, and it's going to say, oh, I can show it to you in any one of these drives. I'm going to click on the main media drive, that array that I told you about, and Mylio is going to show me that photo right there. There's a lot of syncing going on with my library. Usually that goes really, really fast, but I've made a lot of changes last night. Very inopportune time to make changes, so Mylio is moving things around. But let's find a different photo. It might be faster to do. Here's some photos I took with my phone. If I ask Mylio to show me that photo in my original drive, it'll go to the correct folder in my Mylio library, and it'll show me where that photo is. So having a local copy of your photos lets you use that file. There it is. Lets you use that file outside of Mylio. If I want to send it to somebody, if I want to open it with another application, all kinds of things. Of course, I can also just tell Mylio to open that in my application, and it's going to go and retrieve that original file, because that main media drive, that local storage, is connected to this computer. Now, even if this drive wasn't connected, it could get it from the other room, because the Seagate hub, which also holds a local copy of my files, is connected to a computer on the same network. So Mylio could almost as fast bring that file to me locally. That's what local files do. And there's a lot of advantages. You know exactly where the photos are. You can find them within and outside of Mylio. And there's something to that tangible ability to say, okay, my drives are in this device that I'm holding in my hand. And because Mylio automatically creates this replication to 3 different devices, you have that extra level of protection. Remember, with hard drives are like car tires. It's not if they're going to fail, it's when. And that's why I keep multiple copies of them. And that's why my primary one, the one that I use all the time, is actually 4 drives combined into one volume. And that increases the durability of that device and the redundancy. But that device could still fail. So let's contrast that with the ability to put photos on the cloud. And again, both have pros and cons. Local media is right here, it's accessible, it's immediate, it's fast. I don't have to have an internet connection to access local media. I could take my small SSD vault, and they're tiny. It's not this one, but it's similar to this one. It's just a small drive. I could take that with my laptop to the coffee shop, not even be connected to the internet, or even on a plane, have this plugged into my laptop and have access to my full library, full-size originals. I could edit those files outside of Mylio, whatever I want to do. I'm not dependent on an internet connection. Cloud, by contrast, is always going to rely on that internet connection. You'll notice that my backplace right here is paused. Let's unpause it so it starts syncing. My cloud drive is going to take a long time to sync the first time that you bring that into Mylio, because it is going across the internet. It is dependent on the speed of your connection, on the speed of your local network, and the speed of your connection all the way to the vendor. And it's also dependent on that vendor's capacity and traffic and congestion at any one time, right? Even though most sites are very well maintained and work very fast, there's going to be times where your particular cloud vendor might have an issue and you are dependent on that connection. Also, there's the fact that clouds that are saved on a offsite storage on a cloud system are not fully under your control. You are relying and trusting that vendor with the protection of your media. Now, nowadays, most cloud providers have very reliable systems. And that is one of the advantages of cloud storage, right? It is kept in a data center that has redundant power, redundant systems. They have taken that ability or that need for protection, and they take care of that for you. You don't have to worry that a hard drive and on the cloud is going to drive, because they are keeping your media in multiple places and presenting it at once. They're doing all that work behind the scenes. So in terms of reliability and protection, cloud is a pretty safe bet. It's just something that you are paying for continuously, and you have the inconvenience of relying on an internet connection and relying on bandwidth and data usage when you want to access that media. And different providers of cloud services charge different things depending on even the speed of the connection, right? So it's something to keep in mind. But there are a lot of advantages to cloud, including that protection level. The other advantage of cloud is the flexibility and convenience of not having to have your devices turned on. Let's say that I was working with my Android phone. My Android phone, if I show you, is set up to only house thumbnails. It's a phone with very limited storage within it. So it only has thumbnail versions of my photos. And when I'm out and about, if I want to get a better version of a photo on that device, on that Android, I have to rely on Mylio retrieving either a preview or an original from another device. That means that my computers with my local drives connected to them have to be turned on and connected to the internet if I want to access that media from my Android phone from outside the house, which I do all the time. But if the power goes out at my house and I'm halfway across the world, all of a sudden my computers are off and I can't access those files anymore. However, if you have a cloud device as part of your Mylio account, as long as you can see that cloud device, as long as you have that internet connection, now you have another option for where to retrieve and find your media. And of course, there's the disaster recovery aspect of cloud protection. If everything else in your world fail, you still have that copy of your files saved on the cloud. So those are kind of the pros and cons of local cloud storage versus local devices, local storage like an external hard drive connected to your computer versus a cloud-based storage system like Amazon, or not Amazon anymore, sorry, like Google Drive. In this case, Backblaze is what I'm using, and something like OneDrive. For those of you that are pretty new to Mylio and haven't set this up, setting up these devices is super, super easy. I'm going to take you through the steps. I'm not going to actually add the devices, but I'll take you through the steps. You simply go, and I'm going to start from scratch. Let's say I'm over here looking at photos. I can click on the dashboard. It's one of the views on the very top. I click on the devices panel. This is what the dashboard looks like when you first click on it. I click on the devices panel. And at the very top of my devices column here is an add button. When I click on that, I see a list of all the different devices that I can add to my account. And the ones that were discussed today, NAS is also one that we can discuss and answer questions about, are external drives and cloud. If I click external drive, Mylio will show me any drives that are not part of my Mylio account already, that are connected to my computer that I can add. I don't have one connected, so it's not showing me anyone, but I could click here, click next, and that's it. That drive would default to being a vault. If you want to change those settings, of course you can, but it's as simple as that. With cloud, it's not that much different. There's a few more options. So if I click cloud service, Mylio is going to show me the 3 different options that we have available today. One is Google Drive, another one is OneDrive, and then any S3 compatible cloud or NAS storage. And I'll go into more detail on that in a second. But let's say that you wanted to add OneDrive. All you have to do is click that option and make one decision. That decision is whether your files are going to be encrypted or not encrypted. If they are encrypted, those files are going to remain very, very private while they're on the cloud, which is something I didn't discuss as one of the drawbacks or potential drawbacks of cloud storage. Because that storage is not fully under your control, it could be accessed potentially by third parties. It can certainly be accessed by the cloud provider. And some cloud providers, in their terms of usage, tell you specifically that they're going to scan that media that you put in their service, and they're going to use it and extract data from them. Google specifically lets you know that when you put photos up on their Google Drive, if those photos are open file, they're not encrypted, they can see what those photos are. They're going to scan them. They're going to do object recognition on them. And it is very possible that you start seeing commercials for the things that you have a lot of photos about. By encrypting your files, you keep those files private. So that's a great advantage. The caveat, the thing to know when you encrypt files before you put them on cloud storage is 2. One is only Mylio can decrypt those files. So you're only going to be able to see those files through Mylio. Not a big deal because that's why you're adding it. The other caveat is that sometimes some services will offer free photo storage. Well, if your files are encrypted, they're not going to look like photos to that service. So that won't work. Those files will actually count against your quota. You can choose not to encrypt your files, and that means that they can be viewed outside of Mylio. You could go to OneDrive and see those files. So once you've made that decision, you just click the button that says Add Microsoft OneDrive or Google Drive or whatever the case might be, and that device will be added, and it would show down here with the rest of my drive and storage devices.
JC, can I add something?
Please.
So when you add a cloud device, especially if you add it unencrypted, yes, you can go into that drive and see those photos, but we want to caution people not to manipulate the photos on the cloud drive outside of Mylio. So when you add things via cloud service using Mylio, it's in a specific format that Mylio is meant to interact with. And if you start messing with those files outside of Mylio, it can cause your catalog to become corrupted. So I do want to caution people on that.
Yes, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up. And I wanted to show people, those of you that have used Mylio for a while know that Amazon Drive used to be one of the options that Mylio had. That service got discontinued I'm showing it to you not because I want to tease you and tell you what you can no longer get, but because I used to have Amazon Drive as one of my services. And I want to point out two things here. One is, had that been the only service that I had with Mylio, or my only vault, if I didn't have local drives and Amazon took away my ability to have those files, I would have had to download that and create another vault pretty quickly. And when files get sent to the cloud, the folder structure that you see in a local drive is not preserved in a cloud drive. Let me show you that specifically. So here's my main media drive, right? And if I look here at my folder structure, I have Android photos and Apple photos and Aperture and the Mylio inbox. These are the folders that I have in Mylio. If I look at one of my external drives, if I go here to my main media and I go inside the Mylio folder, those are the same folders that I have there, Android photos and Apple photos and Aperture, and there's my Mylio inbox. So I can see that folder structure. If I go inside another folder like this test folder here, I see that same folder structure in my test folder in my external drive. There's the same folders. And if I create a folder in Mylio, that folder will be created in that drive. With cloud storage, that is not the case. And the reason I'm showing you Amazon is because this is what you would see if you were to try to access your Mylio replicated content on a cloud device. You just see a Mylio folder. When you open that folder, you're going to see another folder or folders, plural, that have some very odd name. This is called a hash. It's something that a computer and a database understands very well, but to me is meaningless. And when I open that, I see a bunch of loose files. And if I keep scrolling through here, you'll see that some of these files are actually JPEGs, and I could open them, but they no longer have the original file name. And there's previews and thumbnails and original versions of them all combined. That's because Mylio's database is driving the movement and the organization of these files. The folder structure is not being preserved. And it's not because we're mean and we don't want you to have the folder structure. It's because we depend on what the cloud providers allow us to do. And one of the things that they don't allow us to do when you work through an API, an application program interface, is to maintain that folder structure. So what we have to do is we have to use the database to keep track of things. So even if you're using cloud storage, it's a good idea to keep a local copy as well. And I always recommend that. No matter what, cloud is great. It gives you great convenience. It gives you an extra layer of protection. But it's good to, in addition to that, have at least one local copy, because the local copy is going to preserve that folder structure, and it's a much faster, easier recovery process than trying to download 50,000 photos from the cloud. So I'm about to, yeah.
Oh, from Larry in the chat. How do we see if we have encryption set? So is there an easy way in Mylio to see if a cloud service you previously added was added as encrypted?
You know, that is a really good question, and I don't know the answer. I can see it in the diagnostic files. It's a file that we get when we get an email, but I don't know that. Let me ask that question of one of my techs, and hopefully we can get an answer.
Awesome.
Before the end of the session.
I do know that if it is unencrypted, so what JC just showed you in his Amazon Drive that's now defunct, you could go in there, you could see that there were actual JPEGs, and you could see the little thumbnail of those JPEGs. So that was an unencrypted use. Like I said, I don't encourage you to go poking around in that Mylio folder on the cloud service, but you can glance in there. And if you're seeing, you know, previews of image files, then it's probably unencrypted. If it's showing up as gibberish to you, but Mylio can still read it, then you probably have it as encrypted. But we'll see if we can find a better way to tell. Yeah,
I asked the question. I'm fairly certain there's a way to tell, but we'll get a definite answer. Really good question. I hadn't thought about that before. I've always chosen not to encrypt my files when I use third-party cloud storage or any cloud storage. And the way I personally use cloud storage might be different than the way, Angela, I know you also use Backblaze, but I think we use it differently. I only upload previews to the cloud because to me, I use it not as a backup and a protection. I do have extra protection, but I use it because I want the convenience of getting a really good quality version of my photo very quickly. And by only uploading previews, it doesn't take a long time for them to get there or to get downloaded to my devices when I'm remote. But you use it differently. You use it as a true vault and you upload all of your photos. And how long did it take?
So I have about a little over 103,000 photos in my library right now.
Right.
And I'm using the Backblaze B2. It took about a month to get everything synchronized.
Wow.
And that's going to depend on your upload speeds, and your internet service provider. So I have decent speeds, but not great speeds. And it just took time, much like any other cloud upload. If you have a lot of data, it can take some time. So Lynn has a couple of questions here. How do we see our files in the cloud? So Lynn, what you want to do when you're using Mylio with the cloud, that's a place that Mylio is storing data, but you're not going to go to that cloud to see your pictures. You're going to open up the Mylio Photos application on your phone or your tablet or your computer and view them from within Mylio. That just provides Mylio another place to store them and to access them when you need them. And then what is Backblaze? It's a cloud backup service. They have two different services. They do one that's like a disaster recovery of a full system backup. And then they also have cloud storage that's similar to Microsoft OneDrive and other things. And it's one of those S3 protocol options. So when you go in to add a cloud service, you choose the S3 option, and then you can set up Backblaze that way.
I got an answer to the question, and the user interface in Mylio does not show you if a file is encrypted, but the files that you will see up on the cloud will have the extension .bin or bin for binary.
Oh.
So they won't even have a JPEG or a other kind of extension. There will be a binary file. So that's one way to tell.
Okay.
We'll make that suggestion that we can tell from the graphic UI whether the files have been encrypted or not. And Lynn, to expand on the answer that Angela already gave, you are wanting to access those files using Mylio anyway, because it's going to give you, yes, that is encrypted, Larry. If it says .jpeg.bin, that means that it is encrypted. You want to use all the ability that Mylio has to find your photos. And that user interface that says, okay, I don't remember the name of the photo, but I know when I took it. So you can go to the calendar and find it using Mylio. It doesn't matter if that photo is on the cloud or not. Mylio will make it available to you through the user interface in your devices. So really, it's much easier than opening up a web browser, which is how you access most cloud storage, and then navigating through a folder structure that may or may not be organized. If you were just using cloud directly, like a lot of people use Dropbox, well, that's how you use Dropbox. So you go to a web browser and you navigate around. With Mylio, you still have this very friendly multiple view way of accessing your media. You're just getting the convenience of having cloud-based access to your photos, which is not the default that place that Mylio puts your photos. Mylio by default keeps your photos locally.
We only have JC for a couple more minutes. If you have any last minute questions for him, please feel free to unmute or pop them into the chat, and we'll do our best to get those answered for you today. I can always hang on a little bit longer and answer questions as well.
Angela, you mentioned, or I didn't mention how to add an S3 cloud service. I don't know if I should cover that really quickly or not. I would direct people to go to the manual, and I can pop that into I'll pop that into the chat here really quick with the instructions. But Hannah asks, is it possible to be selective on which photos are sent to the cloud since many have a storage limit? Do you want to talk about that real quick? Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's how I'm using Backblaze, right? So if I were to send my originals, if I click here on quality and I went to send my originals, it would take me almost 2 terabytes of storage to store all my data on Backblaze. And I'm paying by the storage, but instead what I have is thumbnails and previews. Notice that I have the preview option here. What I did is I clicked on show customizations and I said, Mylio, add all my smart previews to the cloud. That means that I have a really good quality photo. Like every photo that you see on my library here, if I click on any one photo, let me find a photo of somebody better looking than me. There's my daughter, right? That is a preview version of my photo. That is not the original, but it's really good. I can zoom in. It has a lot of detail. So previews are great, and it's a great way to use cloud storage for convenience, but not use a lot of space and that cloud service, and does have to pay a lot of storage fees. My 2 terabyte equivalent, if it's just previews, is about 5% of that. So that's going to be about 100 gigs. 100 gigs is a lot less costly than 2 terabytes of storage. So hope that answers your question. In an upcoming version of our software, we're going to have a couple of presets when you go to device quality that will make this even easier. So you can, right now, you can select whether you want originals or previews, and you can also selectively say, okay, I want some previews on the cloud, but only the previews that are 5-star, or only the previews that have the keyword awesome on them. That is quite a bit of granular functionality. We're expanding that functionality even further. So if you only want your Nikon NEF files to go to the cloud and nothing else, or you want photos taken with a particular lens, for example, we will be adding that functionality in some upcoming versions. All right, I do have to go because I have an appointment. Any other questions?
I think we've covered everything that's in the chat. I'll hang on for another minute or two and see if there's any other questions that come in. JC, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Sharing your knowledge and a peek into your library. Looks like there's a question from Deb. I'll go ahead and address that one.
Okay.
And I'll turn you loose. And thanks again.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
All right. So Deb asks, how much is cloud storage? So it really depends on the service that you choose. I believe like Microsoft OneDrive and Google Drive, if you max it out, are typically around $10 a month. Backblaze, Wasabi, AWS, they all have their own pricing structures. So what I would recommend is taking a look at how much space you need, see how big your vault is. And just really quickly here, I can show you how I find that out in my own Mylio. One moment here. Let me get out of a filter that I've got on, and I will share my screen with you. So here we go. All right, so if I go into my devices here and click into any one of my vaults, it could be into any drive, but I'm going to go ahead and just choose my 8 terabyte vault that I have. And if I click into device quality, I can take a look here at what is thumbnails and the vault. And my vault is 2.483 terabytes. So I'll know that if I want to have that cloud service be a vault, I'm going to use up at least that much storage and more as my library grows over time. So you want to take that into consideration. One thing that I do know is Microsoft OneDrive and Google Drive, I believe both cap out at 2 terabytes. So for me, in the size of my library, that's not a good option if I want to use it as a vault. I could put all my previews there, no problem. And to see how much space that would take, let me jump over to a device that I have previews on. I can go into device quality here. And it doesn't have that number there for me, but it'll be more than the 2.2 gigabytes, but a lot less, about 20% of the size of my complete vault. So I could use Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive like JC did and put just my previews there. For those of you who have a very large library and you really need to have that cloud storage, that's where that S3 compatible cloud storage comes in. And that's going to be things like Backblaze B2, Wasabi, Amazon AWS, and there are many others out there that use that protocol, but those are the 3 most popular. And those don't have, well, if they do have storage caps, they're very, very high. You only pay for what you use, and each one has a slightly different pricing model. For my library at this size, I think I've paid about $6 so far for my Backblaze. I've had it for about a month. So you kind of take that into consideration. That price will grow as the size of my library grows. And that'll be, what I end up paying times 12 for the year. So you can go ahead and kind of calculate that out for yourself and see what it is you need and how to make the best use of that. Another couple of options for those who want an offsite option, but don't necessarily want or need to pay for cloud storage. If you have a place of business and you have a computer there that you can keep a hard drive connected to that computer, and every once in a while turn on Mylio and let that synchronize in your office space that's separate from your home, that's another great way to have an offsite copy of your library, or at a family member's house, or if you even have another building on your property. And this isn't quite as good as having it in the cloud, but it works, is you can have an external drive that you swap out like once a month that you keep in another building on your property, and then bring in that other drive, swap it out, and get them synchronized at that point. So there are a lot of different ways to have that offsite copy, and that's kind of your disaster recovery. If your house burns down, if your house is robbed, things like that, that's why you want to have that offsite copy. That's my number one reason anyway. So take a look here at the chat, see if we have any more questions. Looks like we do. Would it utilize Crash Plan? So Crash Plan is a full system backup, and you can't send Mylio to that as a specific vault, but if it's backing up your entire system, that means it's backing up everything at the very least on the internal drive of your computer. Different system backups may back up your external drives as well. And if you have all of your Mylio library stored on an external drive, as long as that's being backed up by your system backup, that is another layer of protection. So that does help. Personally, I use Backblaze, their disaster recovery, as well as their cloud storage, and that backs up my entire system. So I'm able to, if everything, were to burn down, I can always go to Backblaze and not only get back to my Mylio library, but I have my entire system and all of my data from everything protected there as well. All right. And if I scroll down, the pill-shaped icon can be made larger to drag with Apple Pencil. I can never grab or drag it with my iPad or finger or pencil. So that is a change that we'd have to make to the user interface. There's no way to make those larger at this time, but I can definitely see how that would be useful. I'm going to go ahead and put a link here for the forum. Let me go ahead and get that typed in here. And if you go to forum.mylio.com, this is our support forum. There is a section for feature requests. So Deb, I would encourage you to pop in there. This is a feature request. It allows other users to vote on features, and it's very closely watched by our product team. So the more attention from our users a particular feature request gets, the higher the likelihood that we'll get that implemented. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for now. Are there any other questions before we close off for today? All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm glad you were able to join us. I hope this was helpful. I know that, deciding what storage options to choose for your Mylio Photos library and your system as a whole is kind of a big confusing topic, and I hope this added some clarity for you. I want to wish you guys all a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next week at Coffee Break. Bye, everyone.